The emergency alert cut through the darkness of the bridge at 3 in the morning. Captain Zara Wolfe opened her eyes and sat up straight in her command chair. She had been resting, not sleeping. A good captain never truly slept when her ship was in deep space. The holographic display flickered to life in front of her, casting blue light across her tired face. She was 43 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a tight braid. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds, and right now they were focused on the message that had just arrived from the Galactic Council. Lieutenant Commander Danny Marsh turned from his navigation station. He was a young man with sandy brown hair and a face that usually carried an easy smile. But he was not smiling now. His expression was tight with worry. "Captain, we just received a Priority 1 summons from the Council. They want us at the Citadel within 72 hours. Zara did not react. She had learned long ago that showing fear or surprise only made her crew nervous. Instead, she simply nodded and asked the question that mattered most. What do they want? Communications Officer Katie Brennan pulled up the official document on her screen. She was a small woman with red hair and freckles across her nose. Her fingers moved quickly across her console as she read through the formal language of the summons. "They are charging humanity with 3 violations," Katie said. Her voice was steady, but Zara could hear the tension underneath. Unauthorized expansion into the Vega Corridor, breaking the neutrality accords, and they claim we attacked the Rocky Dominion without any reason. The bridge went completely silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing and turned to look at their captain. The Traki were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They had been founding members of the Council 10,000 years ago, back when humanity was still living in caves and hunting with stone tools. An accusation like this was not just serious. It was potentially the end of everything humanity had built among the stars. Chief Engineer Luis Ortega stepped out of the lift at that moment. He was a large man with thick arms and grease permanently stained into his fingers. He had been working on the engine modifications that would increase their speed by 3%. Now he stood frozen, reading the fear on everyone's faces. "What happened?" he asked. Zara stood up from her chair. She was tall for a woman, and when she stood at her full height, she commanded attention without saying a word. She walked slowly toward the main viewport, her boots clicking against the metal floor. Outside the window, a million stars burned in the endless darkness of space. Humanity had been traveling among those stars for 300 years now. They had built colonies on dozens of worlds. They had made allies and enemies. They had proved themselves as fighters, explorers, and builders, but they were still the newcomers. Still the young species that the older civilizations looked down upon. "The Council wants blood," Zara said quietly, "and they have decided that humanity will provide it." She turned back to face her crew. These were good people. Danny had served with her for 7 years. Katie had saved the ship twice with her quick thinking during communications emergencies. Luis kept the engines running through situations that should have torn them apart. They deserved to know the truth. "This is not really about anything we did in the Vega Corridor," Zara explained. "This is about what humanity represents. We grow too fast. We expand too quickly. We do not show proper respect to species that have been in space for thousands of years longer than us." Marcus Webb, the security chief, crossed his arms over his broad chest. He was a former soldier, with scars on his hands and a permanently serious expression. "So they are making up charges to put us in our place." That's exactly what they are doing. Katie raised her hand slightly. "Captain, do we have any proof that these charges are false? Any evidence we can present to the Council?" Zara smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been expecting trouble and was almost relieved that it had finally arrived. "That is what we are going to find out." Danny set a course for the Citadel at maximum speed. "Katie, get me a secure channel to Admiral Patricia Cole at Fleet Command." "Luis, I need the engines running at 110% efficiency." Luis frowned. "Captain, running at that level for 72 hours could cause serious damage to the drive systems." "I know. Do it anyway. If we are going to face the entire Galactic Council, I want to arrive with time to prepare." The crew moved to follow her orders. The bridge came alive with activity as officers ran calculations, opened communication channels, and began the complex process of pushing the ship beyond its normal limits. Zara returned to her command chair and sat down. She pulled up her personal display and began reviewing everything. She knew about the Traki Dominion. The Taraki were insectoid beings, tall and angular with hard shells covering their bodies. Their compound eyes could see in spectrums that humans could not even imagine. They communicated through a combination of spoken language and clicking, sounds made by their mandibles. They were also known for their long memories and their willingness to hold grudges for generations. 3 years ago, the Galactic Council had awarded mining rights in the Vega Corridor to a consortium that included Earth. The Traki had wanted those rights badly. They had lobbied for centuries to gain control of that region. Losing to the newcomers from Earth had been a humiliation. They would never forget. Zara had always known they would try something. She just had not expected it to be this direct. Her communicator beeped. Admiral Cole's face appeared on her private screen. Patricia Cole was 60 years old, with white hair cut short and a face that had seen too many battles. She had been Zara's mentor when Zara was just a young officer fresh out of the academy. "I heard about the summons," Admiral Cole said. Her voice was rough from years of shouting orders. "This is bad, Zara. Really bad, I know, Admiral. Council has been looking for an excuse to limit humanity's expansion for decades. If these charges stick, they could restrict us to our current territory. No more new colonies. No more exploration. We would be trapped." Zara nodded. She had already considered all of this during the long minutes since the message arrived. "I'm not going to let that happen," she said. Admiral Cole studied her face through the screen. They had known each other for 20 years. The Admiral had seen Zara grow from an eager young pilot into one of the most respected captains in the fleet. What are you planning?" "I do not know yet, but I will figure it out. The Traki made a mistake by coming after us like this. They think we are weak because we are young. They think we will back down because we are afraid of them." Zara leaned closer to the screen, and her storm-gray eyes were hard with determination. "They are wrong." Psst. The Starborn jumped to faster than light speed, its engines pushing harder than they had ever pushed before. 72 hours from now, Captain Zara Wolfe would stand before the most powerful assembly in the galaxy and fight for the future of her entire species. She did not know yet how she would win, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty: she was not going to lose. The Galactic Council Citadel was the largest structure Captain Zara Wolfe had ever seen. It hung in space like a small moon, its towers and domes stretching in every direction. Lights glittered across its surface, like stars brought down from the sky. The station had been built over 10,000 years by hundreds of different species working together. It was a symbol of cooperation and unity. But as the Starborn approached its docking port, Zara could not help thinking that it also represented power. The power of the old species over the new ones. Danny Marsh guided the ship into position with careful precision. The docking clamps locked onto their hull with a deep metallic clang that echoed through the bridge. "We are secured, Captain," Danny reported. Zara stood and straightened her uniform. She had chosen to wear her formal dress blues for this occasion. The dark fabric was decorated with the medals and ribbons she had earned over 20 years of service. She wanted the Council to see her as a representative of humanity's military strength, but she also wanted them to see something else. She wanted them to see that she was not afraid. "Danny, Katie, Marcus, you are with me. Luis, you have command of the ship. If anything happens to us, you are to take the Starborn and return to Earth immediately." Luis nodded grimly. He understood what she was not saying. If the Council decided to make an example of them, the Starborn might be the only ship that carried the truth back to human space. The 4 officers walked through the airlock and into the Citadel's main corridor. The passage was enormous, wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side. The ceiling arched high above their heads, covered in artwork that told the history of the Council in images and symbols. Alien beings of every shape and size moved through the corridor around them. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others moved on 4 or 6 or even more. Some floated through the air using gravity manipulation technology. A few were so strange that Zara could not even tell which end was the front. Every single one of them stopped to stare at the humans as they passed. Katie moved closer to Zara and spoke quietly. They do not look friendly. They're not supposed to be friendly. They are supposed to be intimidated. By us? Zara almost smiled. No, they are intimidated by his situation. Humanity is on trial, and everyone knows that the outcome will change the balance of power in the galaxy. They are afraid of what might happen next. A group of Traki blocked their path up ahead. There were 5 of them, each standing nearly 7 feet tall. Their hard shells gleamed under the corridor lights, and their compound eyes reflected Zara's image back at her 1,000 times over. The leader stepped forward. His mandibles clicked rapidly as he spoke. The sound translated into human language by the small device attached to his throat. Captain Wolfe, we have been expecting you, Ambassador Crystal, Zara replied. She recognized him from the intelligence files she had studied during the journey. He was the head of the Traki delegation to the Council and one of the most ruthless politicians in the galaxy. I hope we are not keeping you waiting. Crystal's mandibles spread wide in what might have been a smile or a threat. It was hard to tell with his species. Not at all. I simply wanted to welcome you personally. After all, this may be the last time a human captain walks these halls as a free being. Marcus Webb tensed beside her. Zara could feel his anger like heat from a fire. She placed a subtle hand on his arm, warning him to stay calm. That is very kind of you, Ambassador. I appreciate the welcome. Now, if you will excuse us, we have a trial to attend. She walked past him without waiting for a response. Her officers followed closely behind. The Traki parted to let them through, but Crystal's voice followed them down the corridor. Enjoy your last hours of dignity, Captain. They will not last long. The council chamber was even more impressive than the corridors outside. It was shaped like a massive bowl, with hundreds of sections arranged in rings around a central platform. Each section was designed to accommodate a different species, with seating, atmosphere, and lighting adjusted to their needs. Zara counted delegates from at least 400. Different civilizations as she walked toward the center. Some she recognized from her studies. The Morvathi, small four-armed beings known for their mathematical genius. The Selenari, tall and slender, with silver skin that seemed to glow from within. The Vorn, massive creatures that looked like walking mountains of stone. And everywhere she looked, she saw the Traki. They had allied species spread throughout the chamber, and all of them watched her with hostile eyes. At the center of it all stood the speaker's platform. High Arbiter Verkith waited there, a member of the ancient Solari race. His body was nearly transparent, and Zara could see the soft pulse of glowing organs beneath his skin. The Solari were said to be the oldest species still active in galactic politics, and Verkith had served as High Arbiter for over 3 centuries. Captain Zara, Wolf of Earth, Verkith announced. His voice was soft, but it carried perfectly through the chamber's acoustic systems. You stand before this council to answer charges of great seriousness. How do you plead? Zara stepped onto the platform. She could feel the weight of 400 civilizations watching her, judging her, waiting to see if humanity would bow down or stand tall. She chose to stand tall. Before I enter any plea, she said clearly, I demand to see the evidence that supports these accusations. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Crystal rose from his seat in the Traki section, his mandibles clicking with obvious amusement. The evidence is beyond question, Crystal declared. Human vessels entered our sovereign territory in the Vega corridor. They destroyed 3 of our patrol ships without any warning or provocation. 1,700 Traki warriors died in that unprovoked attack. Does the captain deny these facts? I deny nothing yet, Ambassador. Zara kept her voice calm and controlled. I asked to see the evidence. Sensor recordings. Communication logs. Analysis of the debris. Surely the powerful Traki Dominion documented such an important incident. The chamber went quiet. Crystal's mandibles clicked faster now, a sign of agitation that Zara had learned to recognize.
Out. You dare to question our honesty?
I dare to demand due process. That is something this council supposedly guarantees to all member species. She turned to face the High Arbiter directly. Or does that protection not apply to humanity? Verkatha's glowing organs pulsed thoughtfully. The captain raises a valid point. Ambassador Crystal, please present your documentation. What followed was 3 hours of testimony and evidence. The Traki presented sensor recordings that appeared to show human ships entering their space and opening fire. They showed communication logs with distress calls from the destroyed patrol vessels. They brought in experts who testified that the weapon signatures matched human plasma arrays. Through it all, Zara watched and listened carefully. She noticed things that did not quite fit, small details that seemed wrong, numbers that did not add up. She leaned toward Katie and whispered a question. Katie's eyes went wide. She pulled out her datapad and began running calculations, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. When the Traki finally finished their presentation, Zara rose to speak again. I have questions. For the Council's technical analysts, it was about to tear their entire case apart. The Council's lead technical analyst was a Morvathi named Specialist Tenna. She was small, barely 4 feet tall, with 4 arms that moved independently as she operated her instruments. The Morvathi were famous throughout the galaxy for 2 things: their incredible skill with numbers and their absolute commitment to telling the truth. That was exactly why Zara had asked for her. Specialist Tenna, Zara began, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. You examined the sensor recordings presented by the Traki delegation. In your professional opinion, were those recordings authentic? Tenna's forearms twitched nervously. Her species did not like being put in difficult positions. They preferred the clean simplicity of mathematics to the messy complications of politics. The recordings appeared to be consistent with standard recording protocols, Tenna answered carefully. Zara nodded. She had expected that answer. The Traki were not stupid. They would have made sure their fake evidence looked real on the surface. Appear consistent, she repeated. That is an interesting way to put it. Let me ask you something more specific. What was the quantum signature timestamp on those recordings? A wave of confusion passed through the chamber. Most of the delegates had no idea what she was talking about. Quantum signature analysis was a highly technical field that few species bothered to understand deeply. But Specialist Tenna understood. Her arms went completely still, which was the Morvathi equivalent of sudden panic. The timestamp indicates the recordings were made on the date specified by the Traki delegation, Tenna said. And when were those recordings last accessed before being submitted to this council? Tenna did not answer immediately. She looked down at her instruments, then up at the High Arbiter. Then back at Zara. Her forearms began to move again, but slowly. Reluctantly, I would need to examine the metadata more closely to answer that question. Allow me to help, Zara said. She turned to Katie and nodded. Katie stepped forward and activated her datapad. A new holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing complex patterns of waveforms and numbers that meant nothing to most of the watching. Delegates, my communications. Officer has analyzed the quantum signature. Decay patterns in the recordings? Presented by the Traki, Zara explained. Every recording carries a quantum signature that decays at a predictable rate over time. It is impossible to fake this decay. You can make a recording look like it was created months ago, but the quantum signature will always tell the truth. She pointed at the display. These recordings were created 3 days ago. Not 3 months ago, when the supposed attack occurred. The quantum decay signature proves it beyond any doubt. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted in dozens of different languages. Ambassador Crystal jumped to his feet, his mandibles spread wide in fury. Lies. He screamed. This is human deception. They are manipulating the evidence. Zara ignored him completely. She kept her eyes on Specialist Tenna, who was now examining Katie's data on her own instruments. The Morvathi's 4 arms moved rapidly as she checked and rechecked the calculations. Finally, Tenna looked up. Her voice was quiet but steady. The human officer's analysis is correct. The quantum decay patterns do not match the stated date of creation. These recordings were made recently, not 3 months ago. The noise in the chamber grew even louder. Some delegates were shouting for order. Others were demanding explanations. A group of Traki allies tried to argue that the analysis was flawed. but their voices were drowned out by the growing chaos. High Arbiter Verkith raised his hand, and slowly the chamber fell silent. "This is a serious development," Verkith said. His translucent skin pulsed with colors that Zara did not recognize. "Captain Wolfe, do you have additional evidence to present?" "I do." Zara turned back to the central display. "The vessel's signatures in those recordings do not match any ship in Earth's fleet. They are close, very close. Close enough to fool someone who does not know human technology well. But there are differences." She highlighted a section of the display. "Human plasma weapons operate at a frequency of 847 terahertz. The weapons in those recordings fire at 843 terahertz. A small difference, but an important one. Someone went to great effort to frame humanity for this attack," she continued. "Someone with access to advanced sensor manipulation technology. Someone who knew enough about human ships to almost get the details right. But they made mistakes, and those mistakes proved their guilt." She turned to face the Traki delegation directly. Ambassador Crixtal had sat back down, but his compound eyes were fixed on her with pure hatred. 3 years ago, the Galactic Council awarded mining rights in the Vega Corridor to a consortium that included Earth. The Teotriaki Dominion wanted those rights badly. They had been working to gain control of that region for centuries. Losing to the newcomers from Earth was a humiliation they could not accept. Zara began to walk slowly around the platform as she spoke, making sure every delegate in the chamber could see her clearly. Since that day, Traki intelligence operatives have been working on something called Project Displacement. We intercepted communications about this project 6 months ago, but we did not understand what it meant until now. She stopped and faced the High Arbiter. Project Displacement was designed to manufacture a false incident that would justify military action against human colonies, while also destroying our reputation before this council. The Traki created fake evidence, invented an attack that never happened, and brought charges against humanity knowing that those charges were completely false. The chamber had gone completely silent. 400 civilizations stared at her, waiting to hear what she would say next. "I came here prepared to defend humanity against false accusations," Zara said. "But I find myself in a different position now. The Traki Dominion has attempted to deceive this council. They have tried to destroy an innocent species through lies and manipulation. They have shown contempt for the principles of justice and fairness that the council is supposed to represent." She pointed at Ambassador Crixtal. "I am not the one who should be on trial here today." Crixtal rose slowly from his seat. His mandibles were completely still now, which Zara knew meant he was controlling himself with great effort. "The human speaks with clever words," he said, "but words are not proof. Where is her evidence that we created these recordings? Where is her proof of this project displacement she claims to know about?" Zara smiled. "It was not a pleasant smile. I thought you might ask that." She nodded to Katie, who began uploading new files to the central display. What appeared on the screen made several delegates gasp out loud. It was a complete record of Traki communications regarding project displacement. Names, dates, orders, progress reports. Everything the Traki had tried so hard to keep secret was now displayed for the entire council to see. Intercepted these communications using a new type of quantum sensor that the Teotriaki did not know existed, Zara explained. They thought their messages were secure. They were wrong. Ambassador Crixtal stared at the display in shock. His mandibles began clicking rapidly, uncontrollably. "This is impossible," he whispered. "This is impossible." "Nothing is impossible," Zara replied. "That is something humanity learned a long time ago. It is something the Traki should have remembered before they decided to make us their enemy." The High Arbiter called for a recess. As the delegates began to file out of the chamber, Zara remained standing on the central platform. She had won the first battle, but she knew the war was far from over. The recess lasted 6 hours. During that time, Captain Zara Wolfe barely had a moment to herself. Representatives from dozens of species came to meet with her, each with their own questions, concerns, and offers. The Morvathi delegation sent 3 of their top scientists to discuss the quantum signature analysis. They were impressed by the technique and wanted to know more about how humanity had developed it. Zara answered their questions carefully, giving them enough information to satisfy their curiosity without revealing any military secrets. The Selenari, a species known for staying neutral in most political conflicts, surprised everyone by publicly expressing support for humanity's position. Their ambassador, a tall silver being named Velarine, met with Zara in a private room near the main chamber. "Your species has shown remarkable courage today," Velarine said. His voice was like music, soft and flowing. "Many of us have suspected the Traki of manipulating council proceedings for centuries, but no one has ever been brave enough to expose them so directly." "We did not have a choice," Zara replied. "They came after us. We defended ourselves. That is exactly what impresses us. Most young species in your position would have accepted the charges and tried to negotiate a lesser punishment. You fought back. Even the Vorn, massive creatures who rarely involve themselves in political matters, sent an envoy to speak with her. The Vorn representative was 12 feet tall and made of what appeared to be living rock. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "The Vorn respects strength," he said. "You have shown strength today, human. We will remember." But not all the meetings were friendly. Several species allied with the Traki made threats, warning that humanity would regret embarrassing their powerful friends. A group of delegates from the Cressery Collective blocked her path in one corridor and refused to move until Marcus Webb stepped forward with his hand on his weapon. Through it all, Zara maintained her composure. She was polite to allies and enemies alike. She answered questions without revealing more than she intended. She accepted compliments gracefully and ignored insults completely. But inside, she was preparing for what came next. Admiral Patricia Cole's message arrived during the 4th hour of the recess. Zara read it in privacy, her face showing no emotion. "Captain, you have done remarkable work," the Admiral's message said, "but I need to prepare you for what comes next. The Traki will not accept public humiliation. If you push this too far, they will respond with force rather than diplomacy." The message continued with numbers that made Zara's stomach tighten. 17 human colony worlds lay within easy striking distance of Traki military bases. Over 200 million civilian lives. If the situation escalated to open war, those people would be the first to suffer. "Yeah, I understand the risks," Zara said to herself. But backing down now would only make things worse in the long run. She had thought about this during the entire journey to the Citadel. The Traki had not attacked humanity because they truly believed humans were a threat. They had attacked because they thought humans were weak. They believed that a young species with only 3 centuries of space travel would be too afraid to fight back against an ancient power like the Traki Dominion. If Zara proved them right by accepting whatever compromise the Council offered, the Traki would simply try again. They would manufacture another incident, bring more false charges, push harder and harder until humanity was completely contained. The only way to stop them was to make them afraid, to show them that attacking humanity had consequences they could not afford. When the Council reconvened, the atmosphere in the chamber had changed completely. The Traki delegation had shrunk to just a handful of representatives. Ambassador Crixtal sat alone in the center of their section, his compound eyes darting nervously around the room. Many of the Traki-S allied species had moved to different sections, physically distancing themselves from the scandal. The power structure of the entire chamber had shifted in 6 hours. High Arbiter Verkith called for order. His translucent body glowed with soft blue light as he spoke. "This council has examined the additional evidence provided by Captain Wolfe. Our analysts have confirmed her findings. The recordings presented by the Traki delegation were fabricated. The attack they described never occurred." A wave of murmurs passed through the assembly. In light of these revelations, all charges against Earth and its representatives are dismissed. Furthermore, this council will begin an independent investigation into the conduct of the Traki Dominion. Ambassador Crixtal rose from his seat. His movements were jerky, uncontrolled. "This is an insult to my people. The Traki Dominion has been a member of this council for 10,000 years. We will not submit to investigation like common criminals." "Ambassador." Zara's voice cut through his protest like a knife. She stepped forward on the central platform, and something in her bearing made even the ancient High Arbiter pause. The chamber fell absolutely silent. "I could demand reparations from your dominion," Zara said. "I could call for economic sanctions that would cripple your trade networks. I could push for your permanent removal from this council." She paused, letting her words sink in. Every delegate in the chamber was watching her now, waiting to see what she would do with the power she had gained. "But I am not going to do any of those things." Surprised murmurs rippled through the assembly. Crystal-S mandibles stopped clicking. Even the High Arbiter seemed confused. "Humanity has been a member of the galactic community for 300 years, Zara continued. "In that time, we have been tested repeatedly. We have been challenged, provoked, and underestimated. Every time, we responded with restraint. We played by the rules of a system we did not create, hoping to earn the respect of species who have been traveling the stars since before our ancestors discovered fire." She began to walk slowly around the platform, making sure her voice reached every corner of the massive chamber. "That ends today. Not our restraint, our patience. We will no longer accept being treated as second-class members of this community. We will no longer tolerate false accusations or manufactured crises designed to limit our growth." She stopped and faced the High Arbiter directly. "I have an ultimatum for this council, not a threat. An ultimatum." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. No species had delivered an ultimatum to the Galactic Council in over 1,000 years. It was considered the most extreme form of diplomatic action possible, short of actual war. "Humanity demands full and equal standing in this council," Zara declared. "No more probationary restrictions on our expansion. No more observation periods before we are allowed to bid on development contracts. No more automatic assumption that humans are guilty until proven innocent." She raised her voice, letting it fill the vast space around her. "Grant us this, and we will continue to be the allies we have always been. Loyal, innovative, and fierce in defense of the principles this council claims to represent." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was cold as ice. "Deny us, and we will withdraw from the council entirely. We will form our own alliances with species who respect us. We will expand according to our own judgment, not yours. And we will remember who stood with us in this moment, and who did not." The silence that followed lasted for what felt like an eternity. 400 civilizations stared at the human, a woman standing alone on the platform. And for the first time in galactic history, many of them felt something they had never felt before when looking at humanity. They felt fear. The vote took 3 days to organize. 3 days of debates, arguments, secret meetings, and political maneuvering that would have made the most experienced diplomats dizzy. Captain Zara Wolfe spent those 3 days on the Starbourne, waiting for the outcome that would determine the future of her entire species. She did not pace. She did not worry out loud. She simply sat in her command chair and reviewed reports, answered messages, and maintained the calm exterior that her crew needed to see. But inside, her mind was racing through every possible outcome. If the vote went against humanity, they would have to follow through on her ultimatum. Withdrawing from the council would mean giving up 3 centuries of carefully built relationships. It would mean starting over, building new alliances from scratch. It would mean potential war with the Traki and any species that sided with them. But if the vote went in their favor, everything would change. Humanity would finally be recognized as equals. They would have the same rights and opportunities as species that had been in space for millennia. They would be free to grow and expand without the constant restrictions that had held them back. On the morning of the 3rd day, Katie Brennan received the official communication from the council. "Captain," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "the vote has concluded. They are requesting your presence for the announcement." Zara stood and straightened her uniform. She looked at her senior officers, the people who had stood beside her through this entire ordeal. "Whatever happens in there," she said, "I want you all to know that I am proud to serve with you. You have represented humanity with honor and courage." Danny Marsh smiled. "We learned from the best, Captain." The walk to the council chamber felt different this time. The corridors were still filled with aliens of every shape and size, but now many of them nodded respectfully as Zara passed. A group of Selenari actually stepped aside and bowed their silver heads in greeting. Even some of the Traki allies seemed different. A Cressary delegate who had threatened her just 2 days ago now avoided her eyes and hurried away in the opposite direction. The chamber was packed when Zara entered. Every section was full. Delegates who had not attended the original trial had returned for the vote announcement. This was history being made, and everyone wanted to witness it. High Arbiter Verkith stood at the center of the platform. His translucent body glowed with a complex pattern of colors that Zara had never seen before. She had studied Solari body language enough to know that this pattern indicated great solemnity and importance. "Captain Zara Wolfe of Earth," Verkith announced. "Please approach the platform." Zara walked forward. Her boots clicked against the floor in the absolute silence of the chamber. 400 civilizations watched her every step. She reached the platform and stood before the High Arbiter. Up close, she could see the ancient wisdom in his eyes. The Solari had been mediating disputes between species since before most current civilizations had achieved spaceflight. Verkith had personally overseen thousands of trials, treaties, and decisions that shaped the galaxy. But he had never delivered an announcement quite like this one. "The Council has voted on humanity's ultimatum," Verkith said. His voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber. The matter was debated extensively. Many perspectives were considered. Many concerns were raised. He paused, and Zara felt her heart beating faster despite her best efforts to stay calm. The final count was as follows: 217 in favor, 134 against, 47 abstentions. Took a moment for the numbers to register. Then Katie let out a small cry of joy behind her. Danny grabbed Marcus's shoulder and squeezed. Luis, watching from the Starbourne's bridge, slammed his fist against his console in triumph. They had won. "Humanity is hereby granted full member status in the Galactic Council," Verkith continued. "All probationary restrictions are lifted. All expansion limitations are removed. Earth and its colonies will be treated with the same rights and respect as any other member species." The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates cheered. Others shouted in protest. The Traki section was nearly empty now. Ambassador Crickstall had fled the Citadel the night before, reportedly returning to Traki space to face the consequences of his failed scheme. But Zara barely noticed any of it. She stood perfectly still on the platform, letting the magnitude of what had just happened wash over her. For 300 years, humanity had been the newcomers, the young ones. The species that nobody took seriously. They had worked harder, fought longer, and sacrificed more than any other species in their situation would have been willing to do. And through it all, they had been told that they were not ready, not worthy, not equal. That was over now. High Arbiter Verkith stepped closer to her and spoke quietly. His words meant only for her ears. "You have changed the balance of power in this galaxy, Captain. For good or ill, nothing will be the same after today." "I know," Zara replied. That was the idea. The journey home took 7 days. 7 days of celebrations, congratulations, and planning for the future. Messages poured in from Earth, from the colonies, from allied species who wanted to strengthen their relationships with humanity now that they were full members of the galactic community, Admiral Cole called personally, to inform Zara that she was being promoted to Commodore. The Council had also requested that she lead a joint task force investigating the TH Rockies' covert operations. They wanted her specifically. No one else would do. But on the last night before reaching Earth, Zara stood alone on the observation deck. The stars stretched out before her in every direction. Countless points of light representing worlds that humanity might visit, explore, or even settle someday. Danny found her there an hour before their scheduled arrival. "Big day tomorrow," he said, handing her a cup of coffee. "The whole fleet is gathering to escort us in. They are calling you the hero of humanity." Zara took the cup, but did not drink. Her eyes remained fixed on the stars. "I am not a hero," she said quietly. I am just a captain who did her job. You stood up to the entire Galactic Council. You called the bluff of one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. You changed the future of our entire civilization. Danny smiled. If that is not heroic, I do not know what is. Zara finally turned to look at him. Her storm gray eyes were thoughtful, perhaps a little tired. Do you know what I was thinking about during those 3 days while we waited for the vote? Danny shook his head. I was thinking about all the humans who came before us. The ones who looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. The ones who built the first rockets, the first ships, the first colonies. They did not know if they would succeed. They did not know if humanity would ever be accepted among the stars. But they tried anyway. She looked back at the viewport. We owe them this victory. All of them. And we owe it to the generations that will come after us to make sure it means something. The Starborn dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. True to Danny's word, the entire Earth defense fleet had assembled to welcome them home. Hundreds of ships in perfect formation, the running lights creating a corridor of light that led all the way to Earth. As the Starborn flew between those lines of ships, every vessel they passed sent the same signal. A simple message, repeated over and over: welcome home. Captain Wolfe. Zara sat in her command chair and watched the blue and green sphere of Earth grow larger in the viewport. She had left that world uncertain if she would ever return. Now she was coming back as the woman who had secured humanity's place among the stars. The galaxy would never underestimate them again. Behind her, her crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency.